Hello there! You're listening to the Pinoy MCU Fan, a bunk collective Filipino podcast where I get to talk about everything and anything Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm your host, Jim. Hi everyone! Welcome back to the Pinoy MCU Fan podcast. I absolutely missed you guys. I hope everyone had a great holiday break. And apologies for the delay in releasing an episode. I took an extra longer break just to make sure I'm 100% ready to be back talking with you guys again. And I hope you guys already watched Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But if not, no worries, it will be on Disney Plus starting February 1st. So it's going to be exciting din kasi saktong-sakto tong episode na to. Sakto din yung review kong ito kasi it will finally be streamed online. And as usual, I would like to remind everyone that I don't do my reviews the moment the movie comes out because I really want to take my time when talking about the movie. And of course, I have to admit, I like rewatching the stuff that I will be talking about, or in this sense, the movie that I will be reviewing. Usually, I wait for the movie to be available on Disney Plus before I release an episode, but luckily, I was able to watch Wakanda Forever twice in theaters. I even got to see it in IMAX 3D, which is amazing. And I just learned that kasha pala talaga yung 3D glasses ko over my eyeglasses. So, yeah, cool discovery right there. And also, they don't really wear masks anymore inside the cinema. Kasi pwede rin naman kumain inside. So, ayun, I was able to take off my mask so I don't fog up my glasses. Pero, every time I turned up during Wakanda Forever, I would put my mask back on. Kasi nakakahiya, naluluha ako. Tapos parang onti na lang, sisipunin na ako kasi nakakaiyak ko. So, yun. Kailangan natin mag-mask up every time that happens. But anyway, yes, Wakanda Forever is definitely a heartfelt movie. I know some of my friends cried watching Wakanda Forever, and I really love that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is the movie that officially closes Phase 4. There are so many things to unpack and talk about Wakanda Forever, so I figured I will just dedicate 2 podcast episodes for this movie. So for this episode, I would just like to talk about the characters themselves and just let's talk about the characters. But before I do that, I just want to explain that the formatting of this episode is I will be talking about the main 3 characters of this movie. Shuri, Ramonda, and Namor. So I'm going to talk about those 3 characters first, and then I will be talking about the rest of the characters afterwards. And of course, I guess this is the part where I say that this episode is going to be a lot of spoilers ahead. So this is like your checkpoint, kind of. So, if napanood mo na yung Wakanda Forever, then perfect, you can stay. But if you have not watched Wakanda Forever yet, please pause this podcast muna and then follow my podcast show and then balikan mo na lang ako kapag napanood mo na yung Wakanda Forever. Anyway, let's talk about Wakanda Forever characters now. First up, let's talk about Shuri, played by Letitia Wright. So, outside of the MCU and Black Panther, I've watched Letitia Wright act in Black Mirror. Nasa Netflix to. She was in the episode called Black Museum. I forgot which season it was from, pero sobrang tagal na yun, years ago pa. And the Black Museum episode is one of the few and the first episodes I've watched from Black Mirror. So, I haven't really watched all of the episodes in that series, but definitely, I absolutely loved Black Museum. Speaking of which, Letitia Wright was amazing in that role. Watching Wakanda Forever, it really brought me back to Letitia's performance in Black Museum. I was just in complete awe and I'm like, oh my god, Letitia Wright, you are truly amazing. She really cried her heart out in this movie and I can truly feel the emotions that she was feeling. Now, speaking of emotions, Shuri really had a tough time in this movie. Especially in this part of her life. She lost her brother, tapos yung nanay niya. Major spoiler right there. She is basically alone in the family. The opening scene, it was very powerful and sudden that it really laid the foundation of what Shuri was going to feel for the rest of this movie. Hopeless despite having the means and the ability to be able to save and protect the people she loves. Diba? I really feel for Shuri in this movie. She's grieving in her own way and in her own terms. Personally, I find it hard for me to connect to grief, but this movie really showed me how grief manifests in different ways. Shuri buried herself in her technology, while her mom, the queen, had to set aside her grief and lead a country. But I also think that Shuri buried herself in her technology for a reason. Yes, we know she's the technology princess of Wakanda, so it would be very quote unquote natural for her to turn to technology. But it's evident in her work that she's working extra hard to develop new technology in order to protect her family, protect her people, and, protect Wakanda. With the heart shaped herb gone, with no Black Panther, with her brother gone, she turned to technology to protect them. And the end goal is still the same as Queen Ramonda. Despite their grief, they still have to protect and serve Wakanda. Although, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious na mas personally connected yung grief and technology kay Shuri compared kay Ramonda na grief and leadership. There's a part of Shuri's grief that really hit the most. Actually, I think this is where the majority of her grief and sadness and anger were coming from. Sabi ko nga kanina, and si Shuri din naman mismo nagsabi in the movie, how come she has all this ability and knowledge to do something, yet she wasn't able to save her brother and her mother and her family? It hits harder with the relationship she had with T'Challa because he told Shuri about his sickness way too late. So her grief became hopelessness. And then she got angry towards the world. She wants to burn it down nga, sabi niya nga, diba? But with T'Challa's death, her grief was leaning into sadness than full-on anger. But then when she lost her mother halfway through the movie, her grief turned into full-on anger and vengeance. In MCU Phase 4, we all saw how this phase is really digging deep into grief, especially with our characters that went through the blip. Wanda was going through it, Loki was going through it, Peter was going through it, Clint was going through it, even Yelena was going through it. Yelena is a new character, but she's literally the sister of an Avenger, aka Natasha Romanoff. Even our other newcomers were going through grief, like Shang-Chi and Moon Knight. What I find interesting about Shuri, though, is that she went through two experiences of grief in this movie: sadness and hopelessness, and then anger and vengeance. We all know that T'Challa went through grief when he became the king of Wakanda, as we've seen from Civil War and the first Black Panther film. However, in this film, Wakanda Forever, Shuri went through grief when she became the Black Panther. So there's a difference then between the two siblings, T'Challa becoming king and then Shuri becoming the Black Panther. And yes, I know, I'm sorry. I know I said something last year about the next Black Panther. I have to admit, and I think I did say some disclaimers naman, I was totally guessing who's going to be the next Black Panther at that time because I really wanted to go see Wakanda Forever not knowing a single thing. I did say back then in previous episodes that maybe we will have multiple Black Panther. Or maybe it was going to be Nakia who's taking the mantle. But Shuri, being the Black Panther, makes total sense naman talaga. Especially in a monarchy. I don't even know much about monarchy, but with the death of England's Queen Elizabeth, I was bombarded with posts about like, who's next in line? Who's next on the throne? And I guess from there, I kind of learned like, hey, wait. Isn't Wakanda a monarchy? So if this is what happens when Queen Elizabeth dies with T'Challa gone, then who's gonna be the next one in line? It's gonna be, of course, Shuri. Anyway, Shuri's journey to becoming the Black Panther is interesting. She's part of the monarchy, part of the royal bloodline, and yet she is someone who arguably doesn't believe in Bast. I don't know how to pronounce the goddess name, I'm so sorry. She doesn't believe in their god. She is someone who doesn't believe in the ancestral plane. She's also someone who, quote unquote, scoffs at tradition. And yet, she still took the heart-shaped herb. When it comes to the Black Panther suit, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still trying to feel the design. I absolutely love the minimalist look of T'Challa's suit. But Shuri's design choice was understandable and very Shuri. She's the princess. Of course, she loves her accessories. And speaking of which, I love how she incorporated her vibranium gauntlets into her suit. Yung nasa kamay niya na sonic blasters. She really loves that weapon, so it's understandable that it's gonna be part of her Black Panther suit. Anyway, we got to see Shuri really grow as a person, princess, and protector in this film. It's just the beginning of her Black Panther journey, but it's interesting and exciting to see how she will carry the mantle in the future. Diva. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to Shuri, but I think I will be able to cover that at the end of this episode, and also when we get to the second part of this Wakanda Forever review. But anyway, let's talk about Queen Ramonda, Angela Bassett. So in this movie in Wakanda Forever, we saw more of Queen Ramonda and Angela Bassett in this movie. Like Shuri, she's grieving then of course. Siya yung nanay eh, syempre magigrieve din siya. But also at the same time, we saw how strong she is as the Queen of Wakanda. Miss Angela was amazing in this movie. She delivered standout performances in Wakanda Forever that makes her worthy of winning the Golden Globes as Best Supporting Actress. So, at the time when I was writing the script, it was like days away to Golden Globes, but now the Golden Globes is over and Miss Angela Bassett won that category. It feels amazing. It's their first I think this is their first award for an MCU performance. So this is insane. This is amazing. It's sad that she passed away in this movie. I mean, her character passed away in this movie, so we will not be seeing more of Angela Bassett in the future of MCU. But it's exciting and it feels great to know that this performance of hers in Wakanda Forever is the one that really won a Golden Globe, diba? So yeah. Anyway, I absolutely loved Queen Ramonda's speech at the UN Assembly. That scene was amazing. She was really irradiating the power and superiority and the intensity of Wakanda in that room. She means business. She's all about protecting Wakanda and vibranium. Especially when the Dora Milaje scene at the outreach laboratory came up while Queen Ramonda was doing her speech. It was amazing. That scene was amazing. It was electrifying. The hype in that scene was just, it's like you really have to be there. You just really have to be there in the movie theater experiencing and watching that scene for the first time. It was truly fantastic. And of course, okay, for this other scene, it was one of the most riveting parts of the teaser trailer. And of course, of the movie na din, syempre. In the throne meeting room, she did her electrifying speech that goes, I'm the queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my whole family is gone. She really enunciated the word gone. And like, she really put all of her power when she said gone. When the trailer came out and that speech was part of the trailer, I thought she meant na wala na si King, yung King na asawa niya, and then yung King na anak niya, which is si T'Challa. Pero sa movie, turns out, wala na nga pala si Shuri nun. So, nawala kasi ni Okoye. Ramonda's speech in that room was really emotional and you can really feel it through the screen. She's really giving and she's really grieving Shuri at that point. But as the queen and mother that she is, she cried and grieved for a moment and then she's at it again. She consulted Griot and then she went to Nakia for help. So, yeah. Now, yes, she did remove Okoye from Dora Milaje, and I'm not even going to lie, Queen Ramonda had a point, especially from the Queen's point of view. She did tell you not to bring her daughter to the mission, diba? Ayun nga, protect her during the mission. But I also do think that Okoye was right. Shuri needed to get out of her lab, and I guess part of it was visiting Talokan. But anyway, we'll talk about Okoye later. And yes, sabi ko nga kanina, Queen Ramonda died in this movie. And I still honestly don't know how to feel about it. I do think her death was essential for Shuri to become the Black Panther. But like, in my opinion lang, like the way that I feel about Ramonda dying was, I don't know. I still don't know. I still don't know how to feel about it. Like, did she really have to die? Did she really have to die that way? I do think it's noble for her to save Riri in her last moments. She was also doing her queen duties when she died. You know, when she was controlling the safety aircraft to rescue her people. She was doing her mother duties when she died. She was showing Riri around like what a typical mother does. She saved the Riri in that flooded room like a mother. At least before her death, she was doing what she has always done, being a queen and a mother. Speaking of the person who was responsible for Queen Ramonda's death, next one that we're going to talk about is Namor, played by Tenoch Huerta. Okay, and I'm not going to lie, he is my favorite character from this movie. I literally came out of the premiere and I cannot stop talking about Namor. He's amazing and he's so different from all the mainstream water people characters that I grew up watching. Like, Aquaman, or like the whole thing about Atlantis, or with, like Western mythology with Poseidon and Neptune. The MCU Namor or Namor is a fresh and innovative and indigenous take on water civilizations. So yes, there are two ways to pronounce MCU's underwater king god dude. It's either Namor or Namor. And I want to talk about his name for a second because it is such an important part of his identity. So in the movie, his name is pronounced as Namor because it came from the Spanish phrase El Niño sin amor, which means the boy without love. El Niño sin amor. Honestly, when that scene came up, it was fantastic. It was amazing. It was chilling as well. I got goosebumps because wow, his name, his origin, Namor, El Niño sin Amor, it makes total sense. So in the MCU, his name is pronounced as Namor. Now, non-Talokan people are pronouncing his name differently, which is Namor. Now, again, in the comics, Namor is the correct pronunciation because I think the creator flipped the word Roman. So, binaliktad nyo lang yung spelling ng Roman. So, Roman, naging Namor. And then when you pronounce Roman, man, pag binaliktad mo yung magiging Namor. So, bale, yun nga, pinagbaliktad na Roman Namor. However, in the MCU, so Wakanda Forever, they chose to keep both pronunciations in the movie. One of the producers said, the producer's name is Nate Moore. He said that they kept both pronunciations in the movie because that's how it is in the real world. People have different pronunciations of different words, and it happens a lot with names. But in the MCU, it is confirmed that the correct pronunciation is Namor because of its Spanish heritage and the way Mayan people pronounce it. But Namor is also correct because different cultures with different accents pronounce things differently. So you can definitely pronounce his name whatever you want, but just be aware na lang siguro that the actual pronunciation in the MCU is Namor. Anyway, this whole name thing reminds me so much of my own experience. And it's true, the whole double pronunciations thing happened in real life. Nate Moore is right. Nate Moore, the producer, is right. So, ayun, my name is Jim, which is an American name, so it's pretty easy to be pronounced by different accents or culture. But my second name is very Filipino in a sense, and Americans pronounce it differently. The Filipino pronunciation of my second name is the correct one, of course, because I'm Filipino and we all have Filipino accents, and that's how we pronounce my name, my Filipino name. But Americans and other cultures have their own accent, so they pronounce it differently, and that's okay. You can still tell naman na it's my name when different accents say it. So another example of, I kind of don't want to share my second name with you guys, so I'm sorry. But you know how like we have the name Aaron. Aaron. Americans pronounce it as Aaron. Tapos meron din pag Tagalog, ang pangalan Marion. Marion. Pero pag Americans say it, they say it Marion. Ganon. So, in a way, you can still understand naman na this name, that this person, this American person is calling Aaron, or, ayun, parang Harry. That's how Americans pronounce Harry. Harry. Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Ganon. Anyway, personally, for me naman, I like pronouncing MCU's Namor as Namor because that's the correct pronunciation of his name in the MCU. Pero of course, the comic book Namor is pronounced as Namor. And it also helps na din in recording this episode. Mas madali ko sila ma-differentiate from the movies and comics. So movie, I'm gonna say Namor. And if I'm talking about the comics, I'm gonna say Namor. Moving on. Just a little background. Like I said earlier, I didn't really research much on these characters. As in, when I watched Wakanda Forever, I didn't do any research on anyone. I just watched a teaser trailer and then that's it. I didn't watch any trailers at all. And After watching the first teaser trailer, I closed my laptop and I just went straight to my 2006 Marvel Comics encyclopedia that I have, and then I just read the character bios from that same book. Like, I literally actively avoided any other online content on Wakanda Forever until the premiere. So I really went and watched Wakanda Forever. Like, blindsided is a term. I don't know if that's the correct term, but yeah, basta wala akong alam. I just went in and just watched. Anyway, in the encyclopedia, there's like a whole page dedicated to Namor, which makes total sense because as we all know, Namor is the oldest character in Marvel's publishing history. So there's gotta be a lot of information on this man. But I'm not gonna lie, I was expecting more from Namor's biography in this encyclopedia that would tie his MCU counterpart to Wakanda. So when the movie came out and I learned that it's vibranium in the ocean, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because looking back at the marketing that they did for Wakanda Forever, they did spoil na din na, ayun nga, Talokan, yung kingdom ni Namor is also running on vibranium. So yun, again, I am very thankful I didn't watch any marketing stuff, marketing videos, so I didn't get to spoil myself. And I actively watched Wakanda Forever, not knowing a single thing. And of course, I really want to talk about more about Talokan's history as well, but I'll be doing that on the part 2 of this episode. And speaking of which, that's one of the major differences between Namor and Namor. Namor is of taga-Atlantis siya. So, Atlantean heritage, is that how to pronounce it? Basta, meron siyang heritage na taga-Atlantis siya. Meanwhile, si Namor is of Mesoamerican Yucatec Mayan heritage. But a similarity that they do share is that they are both mutants, diba? Mutants, may mga mutants na sa MCU. So anyway, Namor in the comics is also known to be a mutant, and Namor did say in the movie that he is a mutant. Now, I remember that I published an episode on mutants via Miss Marvel. I think it's the episode before this one, I think. Or like a few episodes back. I wanted to talk about Namor and Namor in that episode, but then I didn't want to yet because I want to see Wakanda Forever first and watch and actually hear Namor say that he is a mutant. And yeah, he did say it. He did say the M word in this movie, and it's like amazing. Like parang na-validate yung alam natin. Anyway, now back to the movie. Personally, I really loved Namor and his whole background being based in Mesoamerican culture and his villain origin story being against the white colonizers. I felt that. I resonated with that. Especially that the Philippines, and the Mexico and the rest of Latin America have this huge similarity that we were colonized by Spain. Watching the scene wherein the Talokanil people and Namor burned down this hacienda in Yucatan, it felt kind of amazing. Because I guess deep inside, I kind of wished that's how our ancestors resisted colonial rule. And in the movie, that scene also, yeah, and that in that scene also symbolized that yes, Namor truly hates the surface world. He hates these conquistadors. Conquistadors. Nabubulo na naman po ako, Diyos ko, my God, colonizers. Basta he hates the colonizers, but also it symbolizes that Talokan resists colonial rule. Namor feels the same way with the way the world is hunting for vibranium. For him, it feels like this is the start of another colonization. Mine the resources, control the native people, occupy the land. And for someone who lived for more than 500 years, he knows what it looked like and how it felt like to be colonized. He is not going through that again. I know I said earlier that this was his villain origin story, but honestly, I don't even feel like calling him a villain. He's pretty diplomatic. He has his reasons, but yes, his methods were very, quote unquote wrong. Calling him an anti hero fits him more. His methods aren't the best, but his intentions are good. I haven't heard of the actor before, Tenoch Huerta, but if you're into Narcos Mexico on Netflix, I'm pretty sure you know who Tenoch is. But yeah, he's a very good actor. He really portrayed Namor into this charismatic king, charismatic anti-hero who really cares about his people. And also, Tenoch, along with the other actors who played Atuma and Namora, they were all very hands-on with Namor's Mesoamerican background and Talokan. Overall, I truly enjoyed Namor in this film. I really want to talk about his interactions with Shuri, Ramonda, and his people, but I would like to deep dive into that in the second part of the episode. Anyway, Namor's story really highlighted the similarities that the Talokan has with Wakanda. These are two nations with similar foundations and goals, but their motivation differs in a way that Talokan's original home in Yucatan was colonized, while Wakanda was never colonized. There's more to discuss about that, about Talokan's culture and history. But anyway, Namor was absolutely amazing. Ryan and the team really knew what to do with Namor's ankle wings. The scene when Namor flooded Wakanda was badass, but it was like sad for Wakanda. I loved how he punched a hole into M'Baku's armor. His spear is a big part of his fit as well, and I'm glad it was a spear and not a fork, honestly. The spear makes a lot of sense because of his culture. And also, King Namor's headdress was absolutely insane. It was absolutely beautiful. It's kind of sad that it wasn't really worn in the film. They did show the headdress during the Talokan speech, but other than that, I really wish they showed us more of it. And also, I love the cape that he wore in the caves. Honestly, Namor's fit in this film was amazing. I love all the fits that he wore. In the big fight scene between Shuri's Black Panther and Namor in the desert, that montage of his mom, Ramonda, Talokan, and Wakanda, it was very heartfelt. Shuri and Namor are both driven by vengeance, but for Shuri, it's grief that turned into anger that led to vengeance. I feel like for Namor, it's anger that turned into fearfulness that led into vengeance against the world. He wants to wage war on the surface world because he's afraid that his people will have to move again or will have to be colonized again. He's scared that his people might suffer under colonization. And ayun nga, sabi ko nga kanina, Wakanda and Talokan, Shuri and Namor have these similarities with different motivations. And anyway, that's my small talk about the top 3 characters in Wakanda Forever. And now let's talk about the rest of the cast, starting with Okoye, played by Danai Gurera. And of course, along with Angela Bassett, it's great to see that Danai have a bigger role, or I guess a more emotional role in the second Black Panther movie. Okoye, as we all know, is the general of Wakanda's special forces, and Okoye went through a lot in this movie. Aside from losing T'Challa, the Black Panther, she also sadly failed her most recent mission and was, stripped off of her title of General of Dora Milaje. Queen Ramonda retired Okoye from the Dora Milaje after the whole thing that she lost Shuri during a mission in the United States. That scene was emotional for Ramonda, yes, but it was heartbreaking and earth-shattering for Okoye. We all know that Okoye is very traditional, patriotic, and of course a great general. She doesn't fuck around, she's straight to the point, and she's a great warrior. Being a Dora Milaje is basically her life. So having that part of her removed is heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking. Kahit na may point si Ramonda, may point nga din naman talaga si Okoye. Kailangan din naman talagang lumabas ni Shuri in order to get out of her lab and just actually do something else. Pero unfortunately nga, what happened. But it wasn't also Okoye's fault that she quote-unquote lost Shuri. Shuri willingly went to Talokan with Atuma and Namora. It's quite sad to think that Okoye's last interaction with Ramonda was that heartbreaking scene. Now, speaking of Atuma, Okoye and Atuma really had this kind of friendly competition between warriors. I enjoyed their scene on the bridge. It felt like the fight wasn't about the mission at all. It's a fight between the two best warriors of Wakanda and Talokan. And as we can tell, it's like Okoye and Atuma took this competition they have personally na din. Para bang nagpapagalingan silang dalawa kung sino ba yung best warriors sa kanila. After nung natanggal siya sa Dora Milaje, Okoye became a civilian, but Shuri recruited her back as part of the Midnight Angels. Honestly, personally, I still don't know what to feel about the Midnight Angels, but I know that the Midnight Angel is a result of Shuri's grief and mourning because she was super focused on her technology while still having the protection of Wakanda as her highest priority. In a way, I think Shuri created the Midnight Angels in order to fill the void that the Black Panther left. But it's interesting to see that Okoye is now a Midnight Angel. We all know that Okoye hates the suit and she's very traditional nga. The Midnight Angel is isn't really traditional at all kasi diba, it relies quite heavily on technology. It will be very interesting to see how Okoye navigates her warriorness inside the Midnight Angel suit, diba? Anyway, let's talk about M'Baku. I remember talking about M'Baku in past episode, and I found out that I have been mispronouncing his name. I was pronouncing his name as M'Baku. Turns out you're not supposed to say M. You are supposed to sound M. So instead of M'Baku, it's supposed to be M'Baku. So I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but I hope I did. Anyway, M'Baku was quite funny in Wakanda Forever, but what I liked the most about M'Baku was how he stepped up as a counselor and kuya, kapatid, brother, kay Shuri. In the first Black Panther film, the Jabari tribe was an outcast. If I remember correctly, the Jabari tribe chose to distance themselves from Wakanda and the royals. But I guess after the events of Infinity War and Endgame, M'Baku realized that the world is so much bigger and our time is limited. Kaya mas outgoing na din siya ngayon. And of course, with T'Challa gone, he made his presence in Wakanda much more welcoming to the elders, to the council, to Ramonda, and Shuri. I also appreciate that he took initiative to console Shuri when Ramonda died. M'Baku also welcomed Wakanda to the mountains when they needed shelter as they rebuilt their communities that was flooded during the Talokan attack. And Baku's actions in this movie, in Wakanda Forever, it truly shows how he is fit to be the king and ruler to guide Wakanda. In a way, he's very much like T'Challa. He's noble, he's diplomatic, he takes care of Wakanda first above everything else. Aside from the two best people in Wakanda, now let's talk about the two best people in Talokan, Namora and Atuma. These two people were amazing as Namora's right hand people. I wish we saw more of them in the movie, but I'm just happy that they got introduced in this film. Namora is an absolute badass. She reminds me of Okoye. She's loyal to the throne, she's straight to the point, and no bullshitting at all. Namora is grounded and fearless. I love how she took initiative to destroy the vessel in that underwater scene. She even climbed up Riri's iron heart and was literally attacking Riri midair. As for Atuma, as mentioned earlier, I really liked the mini competition that he has with Okoye. It's like, wow, he finally found his match kind of vibes. Shuri initially talked to him in that bridge scene, and I love how he's diplomatic as well. Actually, si Atuma and Namora pareha silang diplomatic and they were both welcoming to Shuri and Riri during the bridge scene and the Talokan visit. Yes, Atuma tried to kill Riri, but when Shuri interfered, he truly listened to what Shuri wanted to say. They even agreed to take Shuri and Riri to Talokan alive. For warriors on a mission, I was kind of expecting Atuma and Namora to kill Riri and hurt Shuri on the spot. But the fact that they listened to Shuri's wishes, it shows that the both of them, these two Talokanil warriors, are just like Namor. Very diplomatic, diba? Now, back to Wakanda. Let's talk about Ayo and Aneka. Fun fact, before anything else, fun fact, Ayo is actually the first Dora Milaje that we saw in the MCU. It was in Civil War when T'Challa was on his way to a car, but Black Widow was in front of it because she wants to speak to T'Challa. Aya was like, move or you will be moved. Such a badass. that was badass. Also, Ayo was in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She oversaw Bucky's recovery. She also was tasked to retrieve Zemo in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. One of the highlights for Ayo in this movie is that she is now the new general of Dora Milaje. I have to admit, it feels like Ayo is underused in this film. Moreover, Aneka also felt quite underused in this movie. She has an awesome introduction in the outreach center scene. Moreover, Aneka is very open to changes, which kind of contradicts the traditional Okoye. It does make sense for her to be a Midnight Angel because it's a new armor technology that Shuri made, and we all know that Aneka loved the daggers that Shuri gave her to try out. So yeah, Okoye made a great choice of choosing Aneka as Midnight Angel. And of course, I think Ayo is a little bit traditionalist as well. So I'm sure that she will be a great general because, if you're gonna be the general of the Dora Milaje, I think it's a big part of it is that you have to be traditional. And of course, yes, Aneka and Ayo are dating. Yeah, they're dating in this one, which is super cute. Which is also sad because I think other countries had to ban Wakanda Forever or cut off that scene, which is literally just, I think it was Aneka kissing Ayo's forehead. It's just that. It's literally just a kiss on a forehead. So why would you think that's. Anyway, but this movie is still amazing, even though people find that part disturbing for no reason. Anyway, let's talk about Riri Williams. Riri Williams, which is Ironheart. I honestly cannot wait for her Disney Plus series to come out because it would be great to know more about her background and why she loves Iron Man. I know a lot of Iron Man fans were excited to see the Iron Man mantle being passed down. This also means that this is the latest case of an Avenger passing down the mantle. Although we are not entirely sure yet if Tony Stark personally passed the mantle to Riri, I guess we have to wait for her TV series to come out to really know if maybe Tony had an idea about Riri. We shall wait and see. But we can't really deny that Ironheart reminds us a lot of Iron Man. Nasa pangalan pa lang eh, Iron Man, Ironheart. But personally, I feel like I keep saying this to a bunch of characters, but I also still don't know what to feel about the Ironheart suit. However, Riri's introduction is amazing. It was amazing. I liked how she is the scientist that created the vibranium detector. She's in college, and if I remember correctly, she's only 19, a freshman in college. Her creation made her a target, a creation that she made when she was 19, still in college. And also, that whole target thing also kind of reminds me of how much of a target Tony was when he was the head of Stark Industries. Again, they do have quite a few similarities right there. Moreover, I feel like Riri is our sort of like eyes into Wakanda and Talokan as an outsider. In the first Black Panther movie, our outsider character was CIA agent Everett Ross. But in this movie, our outsider eyes, yung outsider character natin was Riri. She's also quite funny in Wakanda Forever, so I'm pretty sure her TV series is going to be hilarious as well. But yeah, what I liked about Riri is her first suit. I really like Riri's first suit, the one that has more of like a work in progress, but it looked more real for someone who is just making this suit as a passion project. I understand that the red Ironheart suit was made in Wakanda, so the technology is far superior and she has the resources to make that red suit. But I have to be honest, I feel weird and I just don't know how to feel about the design. The LED eyes feels quite, I don't know, it feels very anime, or like it just reminds me of like Pixar's like Eve from Wall-E. But yeah, the red suit is very Iron Man, but I have to really admit that I still feel weird about the design. But I do know some fans really like the Riri suit, so because they also miss Iron Man a lot. But I guess for me, it will take some time for me to grow accustomed to the red suit. Speaking of an outsider's eyes, I feel like Agent Ross is quite close to Wakanda now to be even considered an outsider still. We didn't get to see much of Ross in the movie, but he still played an important role of holding down the US government while Wakanda and Talokan deal with each other. But most importantly, Ross introduced us to his evil ex-wife, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Now, we saw Val before. She did a cameo in Black Widow and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She recruited Yelena Belova and John Walker into her super secret group that we now know as the Thunderbolts. If I remember correctly, Marvel Studios announced the Thunderbolts during Disney Expo last year. Anyway, I said evil ex-wife because she is the new head of CIA, but she is recruiting a bunch of weird-ass people to be a part of her Thunderbolts team. At first, we don't know what it is going to be about. Like, why? What are you up to with the Thunderbolts? What kind of mission are you planning to even create that big of a team? Like, why do you need a team? Like, what for? What's the mission? And I guess Wakanda Forever is the first time that we saw Val's motives, which is, getting vibranium. But then what for? We do not know exactly what the vibranium is for. And we all know with vibranium in the wrong hands, like the US government, we know damn well it's going to be used for a bunch of dangerous technology and weapons and whatnot. And probably it's gonna be used for war or whatever. So yes, as you can tell, just by having Val in this movie, the real villain is not Namor. The real villain of Wakanda Forever is the United States government. I appreciate that Ross was very helpful to Wakanda, to Ramonda, and Shuri and Okoye, but I cannot help to think that he should have also told them about what the US is planning with Vibranium. Like, yeah, he doesn't want to say much because he might go to jail for it, but like, you already broke the rules when you told them about Riri Williams. Might as well spill all the tea. But yeah, sure. He got arrested anyway. Val caught him. But Okoye broke him out. I hope that he's now taking refuge in Wakanda, Just Ross running away from the US government. Kind of reminds me of Sharon Carter when she found refuge in Madripoor. But I'm pretty sure Ross is way too wholesome to even betray Wakanda at this point. Diba? Let's go, Ross. Let's see. And also, if I remember correctly, Ross is gonna be in Secret Invasion. So it's gonna be interesting how that's going to turn out for Ross. So speaking of betrayal, it is the reason we have Killmonger. We all know the motives behind Killmonger. His father betrayed King T'Chaka, which led to his death. We all saw it from the first movie. Filled with anger and vengeance, Killmonger was also about raging war in the world. It makes total sense for him to be the one to welcome Shuri on the ancestral plane. When Shuri took the heart-shaped herb, I'm sure you guys also felt the same. But there's a part of me that wished that Shuri will see T'Challa or even Queen Ramonda. But when it was Killmonger in the ancestral plane, it was shocking. But it also makes a lot of sense. It makes total sense. She's angry, she's mourning, she's in grief. Shuri wants vengeance, and Killmonger is all about vengeance. What I liked about Eric in the ancestral plane is that he praised what Ramonda did to save Riri, but also he did speak the truth that King T'Chaka would just kill Riri in order to keep the peace, while T'Challa was too noble. Killmonger is right. He's all about finishing the mission without wasting no time. Killmonger is the embodiment of Shuri's feelings, anger, grief, and vengeance. So it's really no wonder that it's gonna be Killmonger in that scene. It was a shock, but it was such an amazing confrontation between Killmonger and Shuri. What I do appreciate is that they kinda left off the last part of the visit in the ancestral plane to really show yung motives ni Shuri as Black Panther. So I really like that mini cliffhanger. So it was interesting. Anyway, lastly, let us talk about Nakia, played by Lupita Nyong'o. I saved Nakia at the end because talking about Nakia will lead to discussing T'Challa and their life together. In the first film, we can clearly see that Nakia is also a fighter, but she fights differently, as opposed to Okoye, who is a Tura Milaje, which is basically like a special unit of the military. Nakia is a spy. Wakanda calls their spies war dogs. So kung maalala nyo, nagjo-joke si M'Baku na war dogs saved Wakanda again. So a spy saved Wakanda again. As a spy, Nakia is the best choice to infiltrate Talokan to retrieve Shuri and Riri. Even though she was already living and leading the outreach center in Haiti, Nakia is still the person that the queen went to for help. At first, I was wondering why Ramonda didn't just ask the new general, aka Ayo, to retrieve Shuri and Riri. But okay, I get it. It's a spy. I get it. A spy is much better better option for infiltrating nations. But then, Nakia's role in the movie is much bigger than being a spy that you can rely on. She's a family that you can rely on. It was a big mystery why Nakia wasn't in Infinity War and Endgame. Even Okoye in Wakanda Forever asked Nakia, ever since Thanos attacked, Nakia, you've been away from Wakanda, so what's up with that? Why? What were you doing so important in Haiti that you didn't even visit to attend T'Challa's funeral? It was a mystery that was very much answered at the end of the movie, which is the mid-credit scene. But before I dive into that part of the movie, I would also just like to say that Nakia looks a badass she looks very badass in this movie. She looks so cozy, like a home, and I guess she's also our last connection to Wakanda. I guess she's T'Challa's love after all. So parang in a way, she is like the last connection that we have to Wakanda and T'Challa. She is also fearless, but it kind of broke my heart that she sadly killed one of the Talokanil people. I was really hoping that it was just non-lethal shot, but I guess if you are indeed against genetically superior humanoids, might as well just shoot to kill. I guess this is where Nakia isn't as diplomatic as I thought she would be. Because, after all, she is a spy. So I guess a mission is a mission. But anyway, Nakia is very reliable, that's for sure. Ramonda trusts her, Okoye trusts her, Shuri trusts her, and most importantly, T'Challa trusted her. There's a great reason why Nakia was absent for the past few films, and the mid-credit scene explained just that. So, in the mid-credit scene, that's when we learned that T'Challa and Nakia has a son. His name is Toussaint, whose Wakandan name is also T'Challa. So in a sense, Toussaint is basically T'Challa Jr. That part when Toussaint told Shuri his Wakanda name, I started crying harder. My tears were just like flowing. And I think it's because even though T'Challa is gone, his legacy as T'Challa, not Black Panther, but as T'Challa, King T'Challa, will live on through his son. In a sense, the catchphrase, the Black Panther lives, has multiple meanings and layers in this film. And one of them is definitely about T'Challa's legacy. I love how Nakia and T'Challa agreed to raise Toussaint away from the throne, although it's quite sad that he's not growing up in Wakanda. But with the events that happened, it would be unfair. I feel like it would be unfair to crown a 6 or 7-year-old prince as king. And we all know that happens in monarchies, right? I feel like they kind of don't care if someone is a literal child as long as the throne is passed down to the next royal in line. It's a smart choice made by T'Challa and Nakia, and I love how the Queen Mother, aka Ramonda, respected their wishes. Yeah, and I also love the part that T'Challa really prepared his family, prepared his child for the day that he dies. So it was really a callback to what King T'Chaka was telling T'Challa in the ancestral plane. Like, I'm sorry, son. I think I didn't prepare you enough for my death. I am a bad father. And T'Challa proved that he is not a bad father because he truly prepared his family for his passing. Speaking of which, when I watched the Wakanda Forever for a second time, my boyfriend suddenly pointed at the Haiti scene when Ramonda visited Nakia for help. He was like, the kid, that's him, it's him. It took me a while to see what he meant, but when I finally got it, I was like, oh my god, my jaw just dropped. Toussaint was one of the kids that welcomed Ramonda in Haiti. That was such an interesting detail in the movie. They really had Toussaint all up on our faces before he was even revealed to be a Wakandan royal. Anyway, it also makes sense why Nakia has been calling Shuri this whole time. In the laboratory scene, Nakia was calling Shuri in Griot, the AI. And Griot even expressed that Shuri should probably take the call because Nakia has been trying to contact her all this time. It made me realize that Nakia was probably trying to introduce Toussaint to Shuri way earlier pa. Moreover, when Ramonda and Shuri were by the lake, Ramonda was really about to tell Shuri about Toussaint. But then again, yun nga, Namor came to visit. I feel like Shuri cried talaga during the mid-credit scene because she was mourning his brother. Pero all this time, her nephew, Toussaint, is right there. Of course, in a way, as we can all tell, tayong mga anak ay extension ng mga magulang natin. Toussaint is an extension of T'Challa. And again, T'Challa's legacy lives on through his son. Speaking of T'Challa, I love how Wakanda Forever paid tribute to him through the funeral scene, the silence in the Marvel Studios logo. Whenever the cast were talking about the grief they felt from T'Challa's death, when the characters were talking about the grief they felt from T'Challa's death, they did those scenes with respect and love for T'Challa and Chadwick Boseman. Every time T'Challa was shown or mentioned, I shed a tear every time. I know that some of my friends were crying in the theater after watching Wakanda Forever. I have to admit, in my first watch, I teared up. But then the second time that I watched the film, I was just crying. Like my tears are just nonstop. I don't really know how to put it into words, but Black Panther was a revolutionary movie. Chadwick Boseman really embodied T'Challa, and Wakanda is such a beautiful fictional country that we can't help but be proud of. I really want to talk about Black Panther and Wakanda Forever in more detail, especially that these movies have a lot of layers and meanings and messages behind them, and I want to dedicate a whole another episode just for that. And yeah, I guess this is the end of this episode. Talk to you guys again soon, especially when I publish the second part of my Black Panther review in a few weeks, probably in 2 weeks. And as usual, connect with me on Instagram and let's talk there as well. Like, if there's anything about the characters that you love the most, don't hesitate to chat me on Instagram. And of course, I'm always active there. So yeah, let's talk. Chika tayo. And yeah, that's it for this episode. And bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to me again. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Pinoy MCU Fan. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To connect with me, you can follow or message me on social media at the.PinoyMCUFan. The Pinoy MCU Fan is part of the Bunk Collective. Discover more podcasts at thebunkph.com and follow us on social media at thebunkph. That's it, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!